Greetings, friends. Randall Nagy here, welcoming you out to the BLT report number 4. And you remember that we have indeed covered a very good and somehow mystically related set of operations that have taken us from the REPL mode to the many different ways we can create objects by both honoring as well as omitting the use of dunders, let alone how to add attributes from functions to what other languages call primitive types into our class instances, enough to allow us to talk about our favorite function, certainly one of several that are in the built-in modules. And unlike you might expect, the classic enumeration capability that comes with Python is not a built-in function, as I originally expected, but is indeed a class that will take what we call an iterable and a default parameter of start equal to 0 that will return, surprisingly, two values, not only our enumerated position that we can specify for ourselves, but also an item as plucked from an iterable type. So creating an instance of an enumeration proper as an iterable object itself, we can iterate through each one of the items, getting our default SS as subscript, so as to print out a handy little F string. So keeping in mind that we can have our enumeration start off at 1000 as easily as we can with 1 or any other starting point we'd like to see. Going back to our help on enumerate, we see that, as you might expect, there is a static new capability, and creating objects from a static new is problematic because, of course, new will eventually call init. So we typically like to create our enumerables from a superclass or maybe even another type. But we digress, because the important thing here is that, like our dunder new and our dunder init, we also have a dunder get attribute, which, as you can imagine, is going to return something we've covered, or the get attr, using a self instance for a string name, as well as the mystical members next and iter, that, as you can imagine, are very important for creating an iterable type as required and documented in the help subsystem. So when it comes time to seeing how many things are iterable, of course, a great way to use set once again is to check to see what two iterable types may have in common. In this case, a directory of our instance of enumerate and z, as opposed and contrasted to a set of our directory for something that we just saw was iterable, or a stir. Yes, as you may expect, we do indeed have our iter, as well as our set attr, not to mention some familiar signatures that we have covered, but more importantly, items that were covered in our help subsystem, as well as some were not by virtue of the way we yield items from our iterable type. So we can learn a lot by comparing what the intersection is between other iterable types, for example, commonly known as sequence type, so as to note that while there are many things in common, for example, the new that sometimes appears in our instance list, which of course is a special case, to has the idea that they all have a dunder size of member option, as well as some other topics we may wish to explore that will be common between many collections, let alone sequences or iterable types. Well, I promised to keep it short today, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I think a handful of minutes covered, as well as a single built-in, such as enumerate, is all we need to do. So let's check enumerate off of our list of items covered in the BLT report, so that in this version of Python that I'm using, we have well covered a solid 30% of the built-in features and functions. So a lot more true to what I originally envisioned covering, of course. The real opportunities here is to have our cards so as to remember if built-ins enumerate is either a class or a function. A tricky question, of course. The next one shouldn't be that difficult. All we have to do is pick out which type is iterable between the classes of int, stir, float, bool, or perhaps none of the above. So we should now note that which types are iterable between dict, stir, list, and set. We should know that answer to KA 1065 off the top of our head, even before we took this time to review the capabilities of enumerate. And jumping to the advanced area, 3039 allows us to ask ourselves if iterable classes, 1, cannot be created, 2, are part of an instance of object, 3, are part of all built-ins, 4, determine the instance type, or 5, none of the above. KA 3040 invites us to ask ourselves if we must implement an under next function, and the complement is KA 3041 to see if we know whether we must always have implemented a dunder iter in order to be considered an iterable type. So design more to help us review what we have learned, let alone to launching a quest into more Python topics. For personal exploration, from practitioner to professional, allow me to wish you happy PyQuesting. And as always, I am indeed looking forward to seeing you in the professional software development world.